Hi, Rich Leiter here, and welcome to my channel, The Naked Booktuber. Today I wanted to talk about the book Explaining Postmodernism, written by Stephen Hicks. Stephen Hicks is he teaches philosophy, and he wrote a book in 2004 called Explaining Philosophy. This book was brought to my attention by another booktuber his channel is called The Falcon Reads. I listened to The Falcon Reads book review of this book, Explaining Postmodernism, and it sparked my interest so much so that I decided to read it myself. Now, I'm not going to do a book review of Explaining Postmodernism because The Falcon Reads did such an excellent one. I couldn't do as good a book review as he has, and I'm not even going to try to. All I want to do right now is just voice a couple of thoughts that I had about the book. Just a couple of fragmentary thoughts I had about this book. Before I begin, just let me say this: I think it's an excellent book, just like The Falcon does. I think it's a book that basically everybody should read, no matter what position in the political spectrum you come from. Stephen Hicks is a profound scholar of philosophy. Not only does it seem as if he's read every single philosopher out there, but he knows about the history of philosophy, and a lot of this book he's written is about the history of philosophy, starting with the Enlightenment. Okay, so here are my thoughts. I find that postmodernism can be divided up, according to Dr. Hicks's book, into two aspects. There is the epistemological aspect to postmodernism. In other words, the postmodernists have questioned what we can know about absolute reality. They question that. This is called the epistemological aspect of postmodernism. And then there is the political aspect of postmodernism. That's basically the second part of the book. All of the postmodernists, to a man and to a woman, are far leftists. So he devotes the second half to the political aspect. Now, the only criticism I have of his epistemological discussion, he goes into great detail about Kant's critique of pure reason. Kant was the key figure in assaulting reason. Kant, of course, believed that even though reason has its purposes, reason is limited, and we cannot know noumenal reality using thought alone. And he spends an extreme amount of time, in my opinion, talking about the nuts and bolts of Kant's argument. And I wish he had abridged it somewhat. It was a little bit too much detail for me, even though Kant is pivotal to postmodernism. I wish that Dr. Hicks had abridged it somewhat. I also listened to a young woman, she must have been in her mid-20s, give a 10-minute talk on Kant's critique of pure reason. And it was wonderful. It really helped me explain Dr. Hicks's explanation of Kant. I wish that Dr. Hicks had just toned it down a little bit. I think he was a little bit overzealous with his Kantian explanations. That's the first thing. After Dr. Hicks gets through talking about the epistemological assault on reason, the counter Enlightenment, he talks about mostly about Kant. Halfway through the book, after he finishes that discussion, he says, but remember, we can't really have a thorough understanding of postmodernism without looking at the political aspect of postmodernism, its political implications. And of course, what he's talking about is that all the postmodernists are violently socialistic to the left. Some of them were, well, that's it. So I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's true, if you must know about the political aspect of postmodernism, why the heck did you spend so much time on the epistemological aspect? You could have toned it down a bit. That's the first thing. Now, I have to say, in all honesty, intellectual honesty, I find that when it comes to the postmodernists' assault on reason, they're questioning the value of reason as to knowing the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth of our universe. I do find a lot of their arguments to be interesting. Well, let me back up a little bit. When you talk about reason, this is my own thought. When you talk about reason, you have to be very, very specific. You can't just say, I'm pro-reason, I'm pro-logic, or I'm anti-reason and anti-logic. To my way of thinking, reason is a little bit more multidimensional than that. Personally, I think that reason is extremely important. It's a tool, a very, very crucial tool that human beings have for survival on just a very basic level. I mean, let's face it, when you get up in the morning and you go out of your house or apartment and you say, I'm going to cross the street now. Well, your reason says, maybe I better look both ways before I cross the street because there may be a car coming and it might hit me and hurt me. So reason is kind of important when it comes to survival stuff, isn't it? In the same vein, I am not somebody who is by any means a moral relativist. In the practical sense of the word, okay? Again, the emphasis is on in the practical world. Now, when you come to the issue of reason, ontologically speaking, and when I say ontologically speaking, I mean when it comes to knowing the ultimate nature of the universe, the ultimate truth out there, if there is an absolute truth, I would have to say that I don't believe at all that I'm not a very big proponent of reason. When it comes to ontological matters, I guess I am a relativist. I believe that nobody can really know what the truth is. Nobody can know that which is divine or inhuman or infinite. We're human beings. We only see things through the filter of our humanness, our mortality. So it's baked into the cake that we can never know this. One person has an idea about the ultimate nature of reality, another person has another, and so on and so forth. I don't think you can know that. So in that sense, I guess I would agree with postmodernism. I've said this several times in several of my podcasts. I believe that what the Polish writer Witold Gombrowicz said really resonates with me. He says that man was born out of chaos, but from the moment that man is born, he bends over backward trying to make form out of that chaos. Well, that's what all of these philosophers in Dr. Hicks' books are doing. They're bending over backwards, each one of them in their own way. They all give their own little twist as to their particular kind of form to give meaning to that chaos. But we always have to keep in mind that we have chaos. We just don't know it's out there. So in that sense, I do find some postmodernistic thought very interesting. And I do sympathize with it on that limited ontological basis. Okay, if somebody says to me God has a plan for the world, or if somebody says to me God exists because of so-and-so, or if somebody says God doesn't exist because of so-and-so, it's all kind of the same to me. I mean, So I cast a very dim eye on anybody making absolute pronouncements about the ultimate nature of reality. So I would agree with postmodernists in that limited sense. However, hold on. So I kind of find, when reading Dr. Hicks' book, I kind of find with all of these philosophers, Kant and Hume and Hegel, and who else? Rorty. There are so many of them, so many philosophers, and they all have their own spin on why reason doesn't work. Each one's got their, and I have to say, I come away from this account, and it's a very thorough account that Dr. Hicks gives. I come away from it thinking, I mean, these are all seem to be just word games that these philosophers are playing. It's all kind of silly. It's like one-upmanship. They're all trying to give their latest twist on things, and it's kind of silly when it comes to an epistemological discussion of reason and knowledge. I mean, it doesn't really make philosophers look anything other than silly. It doesn't really have to do much with the world, the way we live our lives. These people are kind of arguing over the extent to which we can rely on reason in a very abstract way. It leaves me cold, frankly. So it doesn't do much for me. It doesn't make me want to jump in and read Rorty or wade through Hegel. I think Dr. Hicks did a very, very good job of explaining just how crazy these people are, many of these philosophers. I also get the impression, reading the history of these philosophers, particularly the counter-Enlightenment philosophers, since the Enlightenment, I get the impression that these philosophers are not really trying to get to the heart of ultimate reality, noumenal reality. I get the impression that these are all control freaks, and they need to have their particular twist on things be the final twist. I mean, if I was an alien from another planet and I was reading Dr. Hicks's book and his account of these counter-Enlightenment philosophers, I would say to myself, what a laughable species these human beings are. It doesn't make human beings look particularly laudable. I mean, when I listen to the music of Beethoven and I read about Beethoven's life, I think to myself, you know something? Humanity has got something going for it. If they could produce a person like Beethoven, you know, maybe I should take a second look at humanity if I was an alien looking down on the species. But when I hear the account of Hegel and all of these postmodernists and Heidegger, I mean, I just think this is all silly word games. And let's leave it at that. Now, it would be just silly. Postmodernism, then, if you read Dr. Hicks, the first part of his book, would really amount to nothing more than silly word games, epistemological word games that a few bookworms have decided to quibble over. However, the thing that's really disturbing about postmodernism is its political aspect, as I said, and that's what Dr. Hicks devotes the second part of his book to. The postmodernists were all violently leftist. They were all either fascistic or socialistic, and still are, and with a very violent strain to them. And that's the part that's always concerned me, as I think it concerns all people who are appalled by postmodernism. That's the part of postmodernism that we really need to take seriously. The part where all these postmodernists are in favor of the state over the individual. They're in favor, to a man and to a woman, to collectivism. You know, another thing about these postmodernists that I see is that they're very, very, they have a very dim view of humanity. I'll say this much for Nietzsche. Nietzsche understood that humanity is basically a herd, and that humanity is basically a worm. However, Nietzsche was concerned about us not becoming worms, about surpassing ourselves, of becoming something more than just a worm. He was concerned with us going up, okay, of us improving ourselves in some way. He was all about that. He wanted to save our species from mediocrity. That's the way my take on what I've read of Nietzsche is. But I'm not even sure whether he was a postmodernist. I should do a whole separate podcast on Nietzsche as a postmodernist, the pros and the cons. But anyway, aside from Nietzsche, the postmodernists all take an extremely paternalistic and extremely patronizing and dim view of humanity. They have decided that people are so stupid and so sheep-like and herd-like that there's no point in doing anything but treating them as sheep and domesticating them, making sure that they obey the state, that they conform to a collectivistic society. They're not even concerned with man rising or improving himself as a species like Nietzsche does. That's what I also find extremely disturbing about postmodernism. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hicks posits at one point that socialism, that postmodernism, which is his big point in writing this book, is that postmodernism is the last gasp effort of socialism to have some kind of validity. It's the last gasp effort, and the postmodernists, he suggests at the end of the book, because they'd be okay with getting rid of humanity. Socialism didn't work, okay? Marx's proletariat revolution never came to pass. Socialism failed. And the postmodernists, or what remains of the socialists, the diehard socialists, they're so bitter about this. They lost the game of socialistic chess, so to speak. So what they want to do is just turn over the whole chess table. They don't care if humanity goes to hell in a handbasket. And they're doing a pretty good job of making sure that happens right now. So that I also find to be the political aspect of postmodernism is the pits. Their extremely dim, paternalistic, collectivistic view of humanity is absolutely disgusting. But now let's talk about the big elephant in the room in my reading this book. Remember, this book was written in 2004. And Dr. Hicks is making the argument. He has an agenda, Dr. Hicks. An agenda which I agree with. His agenda is to show the reader that even though the socialists hate capitalism and they hate individualism, the fact of the matter is that capitalism has thrived. It has enhanced the lives of human beings wherever it has touched it. And socialism has failed. Socialism has led to death and destruction and misery untold. Whereas capitalism really has led to an enlightenment and reason and logic has only led to good things. This is what Dr. Hicks is trying to point out to us. And he's trying to point out to us how nefarious postmodernism is. because it's trying still to destroy capitalism, to destroy reason, to deconstruct everything. And that's his argument, and I think it's a noble, worthy argument. And I agree with that argument also. Good for you, Dr. Hicks. Everyone needs to read this book. However, this book was written in 2004. It is now 2024. And unfortunately, right now, today, as I'm speaking, postmodernism has won and capitalism has lost. That's the elephant in the room. I don't know whether Dr. Hicks has written another book addressing this issue more currently. I haven't looked him up on the internet for any more current comments he has about the situation we're going through right now in the world. But what he says is dated to me. I mean, let's face it. What we have is clearly not capitalism anymore. In the United States and in Western European civilization. Some people would say what we have now is fascism. Some people would say what we have now is out and out socialism. Some people would say well, we have crony capitalism. I don't think it's even crony capitalism or monopolyism. No, I think we have socialism. I think that postmodernism and its deconstruction has, over time, succeeded in what it set out to accomplishment. It has overturned the chess table. All of the institutions that the Enlightenment prided itself on, reason, logic, science, the respect for the individual's rights, politically speaking, all of this has been overturned. I don't have to belabor the point. This should be obvious to anyone who is listening to me. So that is my big gripe with the book. It's dated. Capitalism just doesn't exist. You know, I was also reading another book, or trying to read part of this 1,376-page book by Carol Quigley called Tragedy and Hope. Carol Quigley is also an historian. He wrote this mammoth book. And Carol Quigley, in the first 40 pages of his book, talks about capitalism. And once again, just like with reason, you have to be very specific when you are talking about capitalism. Capitalism has gone through several different stages or manifestations. It has morphed into several different things, according to Dr. Quigley. In the beginning, there was something called mercantile capitalism or commercial capitalism, which simply meant that if I have a good I have goods or a service to provide to you, and you want that good or that service, I will give it to you in return for your paying me money. And when you pay me that money is mine. It is my property. It does not belong to the state. So a large part, or not a large part, an integral part of commercial and mercantile capitalism was the notion of property rights. Your property, your stuff, was your stuff to dispose of at your discretion. You received money in return for the exchange of goods and services. That money was yours, not the state, and you could then dispose of that money and at your discretion. Property rights, and I believe in property rights, and in that specific definition of property of capitalism, I am a capitalist. I believe in that. But capitalism didn't just end there, as it was supposed to be. What happened was that commercial/mercantile capitalism then morphed into something called financial capitalism. What is financial capitalism? That means that you no longer need to produce or provide a good or a service. You no longer need to create anything of worth in order to receive money in return. You can make money simply by manipulating financial instruments. That's financial capitalism. That's what the stock market is all about. That's what banks are all about. What's a mortgage? A mortgage is a financial instrument. Money is made or lost selling financial instruments. Now, that's not totally bad. I mean, if I invest money in the stock market, if I buy a stock, that means I have a part in a company. I am a shareholder in a company. And if that company creates a good or a service which is in demand and people buy it, well, that company thrives economically. And I, as a shareholder, reap the rewards of that success of the company. And I make money too. The company makes money, and I, as a stockholder, make money on it. Okay, and that's okay too, that form of financial capitalism. It's all predicated still on the notion that something of worth is being created by that company, and it's in demand. So you're still creating something. But that financial capitalism has now morphed into something which is even beyond financial capitalism. Did you know now, I mean everyone knows this, that you can do something which is called shorting the market, which means that you can bet that if a company doesn't do well, if a company doesn't create a product which everybody wants to buy, if that company starts going down the tubes, if you short that company, if you bet the company is going to fail, you can make money on it that way. And I think that that's wrong, that form of capitalism. I don't think that a person should be able to bet that nothing is produced, lots of people have made tons of money betting that our economy is going down the tubes, which it is, and they've made a ton of money on it. Nothing is produced. Those people are simply placing a bet that our economy is failing, and they make money on it. And to me, that is an abomination and a perversion of the original mercantile commercial capitalism. And that's what we have now. We have banker, technocrat, / financial capitalism, where nothing is being produced of value at all. And certain people are making tons of money on it. That's not capitalism. So when Dr. Hicks talks about how capitalism is the way to go and it's thriving, not the form of capitalism we have now. That's why I say we don't really even have capitalism anymore. Whatever the heck you want to call this, you want to call it protectionism, socialism, monopolyism, a technocracy. You call it what you want, but it's not capitalism. We don't have that anymore. So that's it. Those are a few of my thoughts about Stephen Hicks's book, which once again, as I say, is a wonderful book. It's a very comprehensive book. It's a book which I think everybody should read. Thank you.